No birthdays. I mean,
No
you couldn't
birthdays.
celebrate your birthday. You'd wake up in the morning on the day of your birthday. I can remember doing this often. And I slept in the same bed as my sister, and I'd say, I'm 10. And she'd say, happy birthday. That's it.
Hello! Oh my God, this is so nice. They've even hoovered. It's just the cleanest stage up here. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the International Book Festival. Welcome to all of you here online, and to all of you watching at home or up on the hill in the square. I'm Damian Barr, and I'm delighted to be hosting this event. It's a very special event with one of my very favourite people. We've actually had a lovely day out today in Edinburgh. We ran into each other at breakfast, me and Kit, and we ended up going to Topping's bookshop, which is so nice. You have got the nicest bookshops here in Edinburgh. And then down to Porty Books, down in Portobello. Didn't get a paddle, but still had a very nice time. Now, this year's online programme, as you will know, is pay what you can. So if you're watching at home and you can afford to, please donate to help keep the festival as accessible as possible. Before we go any further, please make sure your phones are set to silent in case anybody gets a text from their energy company. We don't want any screaming during today's event. And if you are tweeting, please be discreet. The hashtag is, "This country needs a revolution. When are we going to get one? Let's start with Kit's memoir." Yes, a round of applause for that hashtag. I think we'll have that. Yes, we will. So anyway, Kit, you will know she's the award-winning and best-selling author of The Trick to Time and My Name is Leon, which was just made into a TV show. And she also came up with the idea for and edited Common People, which is a brilliant collection of working-class voices and stories. And I've got a wee piece in there all about my Granny Mac taking me to buy my school uniform with co-op stamps. There you go. So Kit's memoir, here it is. Without warning, and only sometimes, scenes from an unpredictable childhood. It's her story of growing up in a household of opposites and extremes in 1960s and 70s Moseley. So our mum is Sheila, a wee white Irish woman who becomes a Jehovah's Witness, and she believes quite sincerely that the world is going to end in 1975. Spoiler, it didn't, just so you know. That's why you're all here. Arthur is her dad. He's lanky, he's musical, he dreams of returning to St. Kitts, and he saves up his wages from being a bus driver to build the family a house there. And in between all of this, you've got Kit. She's caught between worlds, between cultures. She's watching everybody, and she's storing up all these stories for a career that she could only dream of. The memoir is funny, it's honest, and powerful, as honest and powerful and funny as the woman herself. Please welcome Kit Duval.
Thank you.
Hiya.
Hello. Hello. Hello, everyone. I forgot to speak to you. I was just talking to Damian.
I had to move the furniture as well today, so they've got me doing it all. Before we start talking, and we are going to take your questions later, and we've also got questions coming in online, will you give us a wee reading?
I will. And just to put some context on this, my mother, Irish Catholic, has had the knock on the door from Jehovah's Witnesses, and she becomes one. I'm 6 at the time. Then Mom gets baptised at the big assembly in London, and people start to call her sister. She learns all the rules and all the things she has to do to actually get to paradise, all the studying and preaching and not smoking and not fornicating, nor swearing, nor stealing, or even thinking about stealing, and giving a little bit of money if you can afford it, and remembering the widow's mite if you can't, and making sure that everyone knows you're a Jehovah's Witness, because otherwise you were like Peter, who denied Jesus, and grabbing every single opportunity to witness to people, even in the most unusual circumstances, like on the bus or at the park, and then answering questions at the Kingdom Hall by putting your hand up and reading a scripture, and attending every single meeting, no matter what the weather, good or bad, and deciding whether you want to be wheat or you want to be chaff, because the chaff gets blown away, but the wheat isn't. and women not wearing trousers and men always wearing a suit and tie and never having a beard, because that would make them look like hippies, but a moustache is okay, and women not teaching men but knowing their place in God's order of things, and children being respectful to their parents and obedient in all things, remaining virgins until marriage, and only marrying another Jehovah's Witness, and cutting out any bits of yourself that felt like they were turning you into a homosexual, which is an abomination unto the Lord, and remembering not to talk to anyone who used to be a Jehovah's Witness. And if ever you're in any doubt about anything whatsoever, there's a scripture in Jehovah's Witness, special edition of the Bible, that can tell you how to behave or what to do. Of course, it's important to remember that Jehovah made us with free will. Maybe you don't want to keep the rules, and maybe you know other card games which don't involve the Bible. If that's the case and you don't want to live forever, there's also something waiting for you. For the liars and thieves and people who watch Top of the Pops instead of going to the meeting, and people who accept birthday cards, and people who want to have sex with their boyfriend or girlfriend, or boyfriend and girlfriend, and people who think hymns sound nice, and anyone who is Catholic or Muslim or Sikh, Christadelphian, Methodist, Baptist, Mormon, Seventh-day Adventist, Church of England, Hindu, Jew, atheist, Scientologist, Buddhist, or just plumb not interested, there is a terrible death waiting for them. They will die at Armageddon when God brings his righteous judgment on all the evil people in the world with earthquakes and floods and fires and death and destruction. There isn't long to wait.
I had no idea there was so much that you couldn't do.
Yes.
Like, it seemed to me there was more that you couldn't do than you could do. The thing about the birthday cards really shocked me. You weren't allowed to get a birthday card.
No birthdays. I mean,
No
you couldn't
birthdays.
celebrate your birthday. You'd wake up in the morning on the day of your birthday. I can remember doing this often. And I slept in the same bed as my sister, and I'd say, I'm 10. And she'd say, happy birthday. That's it. You would come downstairs. My mother's never going to mention it. No one's going to mention it. Just nothing. It was an ordinary day. So obviously, when I got to 21, I went bananas.
Yeah.
And my children now cannot forget my birthday. It's a sacred day. And for my children, they have birthdays and half birthdays.
Do they?
So my daughter's birthday's on January the 12th, and she has something on July the 12th. A half birthday, because it's a whole lot year to wait.
So, but what exactly, I mean, I know it's hard to explain, but what was the reasoning behind not having a birthday? Just they didn't like cake?
No, in the Bible, I think there's 2 birthdays mentioned, and on both birthdays, something bad happened to God's servants. I think Herod had a birthday, and John the Baptist lost his head or something, can't remember. Anyway, there's no rationale, it's nonsense.
Right.
But as a child, you know, it's a big deal to have a birthday. You love a birthday. And we were told it was drawing attention to yourself, and you had to be humble and not selfish. So it just passed like a terrible day.
Okay. You didn't mention the woman who you talk about in the book, this figure called Stella.
Yes.
And Stella is the woman who knocks on the door, who converts your mother. If that's the right word to use. Tell us about Stella, and then tell us about life at 70 Springfield Road. What was going on behind that door?
So my father was from the West Indies. He was a very proud man, loved himself, loved to wear beautiful clothes and beautiful shoes, and spent money on himself and bought a beautiful car when we had no money. And my mother, who was...
So how did you do that? Was that debt, or was that...
No, all of his wages went on his self,
right.
his body, and also his dream of a house in the West Indies. So he didn't contribute anything to the household. He just lived there and ate there. And then my mother, who was 5'2", Irish woman, worked 25 jobs. She always had a job on the go. She'd knit Aran jumpers. She, in her idle moments, she would do catalogues. She was a cleaner. She worked in a shop. She was a childminder. There was always, she had to be earning because she had 5 children. So behind the scenes, we had these 2 people, very disjointed, very much not a couple, 5 very clever, very cheeky children, very hungry children, very cold children. And then Stella knocks on the door and says, paradise awaits. And my mother's like, oh my God, great. So she becomes Jehovah's Witness, where she was a Catholic before. And all fun stopped. We thought there was no fun. And then that she became a Jehovah's Witness. And it was like, there is now no fun. It was bad.
And so she wasn't a very attentive Catholic then, your mom?
She had been when she was growing up. Obviously, she lived in the Irish community and she was a Catholic. But then she met my dad and fell in love and had 3 children, as she would say, out of wedlock, which she found shaming and which her mother was horrified about. You know, this Irish woman that had come for a better life, and my mother's gone with a lower rung than the Irish were. You know, you do not come here for a better life and then marry an immigrant who's having even a worse time than you are.
Yes, it's very striking how unhappy white granny is about having a black son-in-law and having children that don't easily fit one or the other.
Neither one thing or the other, neither fish nor fowl, she used to say. I mean, what are they? Yeah, what are they? She used to say it to my mother in front of us. What are they? You know, they don't belong here and they don't belong there, and they're going to have a terrible time at school. It's okay for you, but what about the children? You should have thought about that. And we were just like, they're mad. You know, fortunately, we never internalized one word that any of them said. We just thought they're all mad and they're over there, and we used to laugh about them.
Is that, do you think, because there were enough of you?
Yes.
That you could be your own little unit?
Absolutely. We were a tribe and we were clever and we could sort of see behind what was going on with them. And so my father used to give us regular talks about white people. He used to call it the white man. He said, let me tell you about the white man. And so he'd start telling us about the white man and we'd go, Dad. Well, we didn't say it because he'd have gone mad, but we'd be nudging each other like, we're half white, we're half white.
Yeah.
We go, yes, Dad, yeah. He'd go out, and my mother, who worked as a nursing auxiliary, she used to work with black nurses who she never got on with. So she'd come home and tell us about black women, and she's got 4 black women there, and she'd say, you know what black women are like? And we used to be nudging each other like, she's mad. We never took it in, we never worried about it, we never thought she had any valid points whatsoever. We just think, we'll all leave home at 16. We've just got to count down to 16.
Watching the clock.
Yeah.
So I wasn't so surprised by the racism of white granny, as she's called in the book. But I was a bit more surprised by the revelation of the racism that your mother experienced from your dad's community, and from Black Nana as well. Yeah. So tell us a wee bit about that.
We didn't know this at the time, but when my father had come over from the West Indies to England, he had left behind a girlfriend and a baby. So then he meets my mother, has 5 children really quite quickly, and calls Black Nana over, calls his mother over. We called her Black Nana because we had a black and a white one. And so Black Nana comes over.
Did you call them Black Nana and White Nana to their face?
Not White Nana. Black Nana, we called her Black Nana, but White Nana, we never did. So Black Nana came over to look after the children while my mother went to work in a crisp factory, and which we loved because she brought home broken crisps. So Black Nana resented the fact that he'd met a white woman when he had this woman in the West Indies who my Black Nana loved.
Right.
So she hated my mother, and she didn't like me, and she really didn't like my older sister, and she really loved my younger sister. I sort of got ignored a bit, but she was very, very hostile to my mother. She was very, she was not nice at all, and she looked after us all the time. She was our main carer till I was about 5, I think. Yeah.
And how, as a kid, do you cope with that level of domestic tension? And did it erupt? I mean, in the book, you sort of are aware of it, it's like weather that you're just enduring. But I wonder, thinking about it, having written the book, how normalised it became.
It was very normalised, but we were always trying to work out who was the boss.
Right.
So we thought, okay, Dad's the boss of Mom, but Black Nana's the boss of Dad. Unless Dad's not in, then she's the boss of Mom. And we didn't know who to obey at any given time because they were all very strong characters. So we were just like constantly calibrating what trouble you'd get into. And of course as well, my mother had a sort of Irish Brummie accent. My grandmother had a very strong West Indian accent. My dad had less of a West Indian accent. And we had vocabularies for all of them. We had a complete vocabulary and music to our voice to talk to Black Nana, because she'd tell you off if you sounded too English. And then for my mother, you better not sound West Indian when she comes in from work. So you had to be slightly Irish, slightly Brummie. It was just, and all the time you'd have these different words for things. You're like, if something's hot, peppery hot, it's called pepper. So you'd say, is that pepper? Meaning, is it spicy?
Yeah.
I couldn't say that to my mom. She'd hit the roof. She'd say, wait, got to speak properly. So you'd go, okay.
So you've got like all these external people policing you, and you're code switching in between them all. But when you were all the kids together, what were you sounding like to each other?
Like this, really. And we're taking the piss out of them. All the time. So one of us would be my dad and one of us would be my mom. We'd have this sort of pretend argument and we'd be Black Nana. She had a limp. I mean, we were very cruel, but we used to limp around the house like this. And my Irish grandmother, I don't know if you know the Wexford accent, it's very whispery. And so we'd do that and we'd just mock them. I mean, we were really cruel, but it was our survival mechanism to reinforce amongst each other, really, that they're mad. They're mad. They're just not right, and we will leave one day.
Tell us about the house and the street and the neighbourhood. What was it like there at number 17?
So we lived in Moseley, which was a very bohemian, very middle-class area, with huge Victorian, beautiful houses in a sort of little village. And then on the outskirts, it sort of bled from being Moseley into the Irish area. So we lived sort of just on the edge. I think we were Moseley by about 40 yards, but it was Moseley.
Right.
So it was a tall, thin Victorian terrace, 3 bedrooms, 5 children, 2 adults and lodgers. We had lodgers. And my mother looked after 5 children. So you were packed
So you just threw that in casually. We had lodgers, and my mother looked after 5 children. She had 5 children of her own.
Yes.
So there are 10 children.
There are 10 children.
In a 3-bedroom house.
3-bedroom house.
With lodgers, 2 adults, and Black Nana.
We were packed in like sardines. We were packed in. We were three of us slept in a double bed. My sister had a cot for way past the time when she should have had a cot.
Yeah.
And bizarrely, my father insisted on the boy child having his own bedroom, which there was no space for, but he had to because he was a boy.
Can I just say that was me when I was a boy as well? It worked in my favour and I now feel very guilty about it.
Yeah,
but,
so he was like a prince. Yeah. He was like a prince till my dad went out. Then we would torture the life out of him. In fact, when he was at school, you know the way, you sit in rows at school. And so the teacher used to walk up and down the rows. And every time the teacher came behind my brother Dean, he'd go like this. And they called for my mom. And she said, oh, that's his sister, don't worry about it. Because I would walk past him and hit him every day. Every day. He's forgiven me.
I don't think he has forgiven you. Because recently, when Kit was made a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, an august body and a great honour, she was sitting there. Whose pen did you choose to sign?
Jean Rhys.
You signed it with Jean Rhys. So you can have Jean Rhys, you can have Andrea Levy, you can
Oscar
have
Wilde.
Oscar Wilde's pen. And you're sitting there signing this gigantic ledger and looking just gorgeous and so happy. And you put that picture out on the internet, and her brother drew a cock and balls onto the picture, and it was absolutely hilarious.
Right.
It was instantly made me realise that he was still somewhere a 9-year-old, and that you had just still clipped him on the back of his head.
Absolutely.
It's very funny.
Great.
I think I saw that picture in the Times, actually. I think that one of the papers picked it up.
Did
and
they?
It was very
great.
Made me laugh. So there's you and there's all of them. How do you get any time to yourself in that house, or do you even want it?
I do. I was very much the watcher of the family. So the other four children in my family were very doers. They were doing exciting things. They were naughty. I mean, I was naughty, but they were really active, and I used to watch. My favourite thing in the world was to go and sit on the front step or the gate and watch people go past. I mean, it was paradise. You just watch people walk up the road and watch their footsteps or the way they carried the bag, or if two people were talking. I absolutely loved it. And that was me. I was just a watcher. And I've become the sort of custodian of family stories, because while people are doing, I'd be watching behaviours and comments, and I could imitate anybody because I'd have their mannerisms down. And watching for me was heavenly. I loved it, and I still do. Still love watching.
You didn't feel apart from things. You didn't feel left out of it. You felt like you were a part of it by watching.
I was completely a part of it, but I was just much more watching everything happen and watching interactions between people and strangers. The road, we lived on a bus route, so it's a very narrow road, and two buses couldn't pass, so they used to have to park, and I'd love that. I'd look at the people looking at me, and I'd look at them. I thought it was fantastic. It's great.
You talked earlier about, being hungry and cold.
Yes.
And this is, it's that feeling that's familiar to me, and it's something that I've written about too. And it's something that I think is sort of very much part of the moment that we're living in. And I want to talk to you about your experiences of that at the time. Why was that happening, and how did you feel about it in that moment?
So my father was saving up to buy a house in the West Indies, and he was saving up on a bus driver's salary, so he contributed nothing to the household. I think he might have paid the electricity bill. No, he didn't, because we had a meter. He paid the gas bill probably. Nothing else. So my mother used to work very, very hard to try and feed us. Obviously she didn't. She couldn't. There's 7 of us, including my father, to feed on her meagre wages on these 25 different jobs. So there was never enough food, never, ever, ever. She never did a big shop, what you'd call the big shop. She'd come home with bits and pieces, not meals. She never fed us meals, ever. Well, once a year we might have a meal, but it was more likely to be bread or Weetabix or something. It was bits and pieces. And I was very, very thin, and so was Dean, very, very thin. And the others were sort of stronger, got more food. They managed to be okay. I have never got over being hungry, never. It was painful. It was very humiliating, very, very humiliating to be hungry and to be not dressed properly and to be cold. I was constantly sick. I was taken to hospital twice for being too thin, too underage. This would be 19... maybe 67, or maybe I was 7 or 8. I was very, very ill, sickly child, and it was a terrible, terrible thing to be. I don't think it ever leaves you. In fact, now when my brothers and sisters, when we visit one another, we sort of walk through into and open each other's fridge, and we just look in it. It's like a hello, and it's sort of, have you got enough to eat? Have I got enough to eat? Is this a safe environment? It's very damaging, and the casualness with which people are now talking about people being hungry or having to use a food bank, and those absolute shite comments about people don't know how to budget properly.
Oh, God.
People do know how to. There's no better budgeter than a woman, a single parent with 2 kids, or a man with 2 kids. You know how to budget. And it's not lack of budgeting that is causing people to be hungry, but it's so damaging, especially to children. Anybody here who works in education will know that an unfed child cannot work at school.
No.
They can't concentrate. I remember going to school, and for a start it was warm, and I loved that because our house was so cold, and it was so lovely to go to a warm classroom, but I was hungry and I was tired. I didn't sleep. And you'd have this warmth and the hunger, and you just felt I felt very, very lightheaded at school. And so that was 1967. This is 2022. It goes on.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't right then, and it's not right now,
No.
and it's somehow even more wrong that the progress is not going in the direction that it should be. This
Absolutely.
idea that with every year, with every government, things get better for children
Yes.
and young people, and for adults too. I mean, there were hungry adults in that house as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, I really clearly remember the free lunches at school.
Yes.
And the shame of having the ticket, which meant that you couldn't pay with money to get the free
Yes.
lunch. But I also just so clearly remember the joy of having a
Hot meal.
in the middle of the day. I mean,
Yes.
it was unbelievable luxury. I
Absolutely.
couldn't believe that I could have a baked potato. It's what I always had: baked potato, beans and cheese, battered sausage on the side. Classy.
Chocolate concrete.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
everyone
chocolate
remember chocolate concrete
I
at
remember
school
it.
with custard? Oh
Yeah.
my God, it was paradise. We ate so well at school.
Yeah.
Which I know probably isn't the case now, but we ate really well at school.
Yeah, no,
and then you'd come home to nothing.
And also, the holidays are not a joyful thing,
Not a
right?
joyful thing.
Because you become, it's Easter, it's Christmas, it's summer, there's weeks stretching
Yes.
before you. And you describe this in the book where, you don't know when you're going to have another meal.
Absolutely. It was very, very much in doubt that we would eat any day. You could never depend on having a meal. You would roam the house. There was a pantry in our house. There was nothing in the pantry. But you'd open the door anyway because there might be something in there. And my brother, I know this sounds so terrible, but it's true. He used to lick OXO cubes. I couldn't bear the taste, but he used to say, no, it's like meat. It's like meat, and he'd put an OXO cube on it. It sounds so extreme, but we were extremely hungry.
Yeah.
And you would do anything to just have something to eat.
Yeah. Did the Jehovah's Witnesses feed you?
No.
They didn't do that.
No, you live on God's word.
Oh
and
my God. Delicious.
Manna. Yeah, absolutely. No, there's nothing like that. I mean, they would not have seen it as their responsibility, really. But anyway, my father did earn enough money to feed us.
Yeah.
He just
Chose
didn't
not
spend it on us, yes.
Was there, within the wider family, like with either Black Nan or White Nan, was it kept secret from them because it was shameful that you were hungry, or did they know and they just...
They knew. A white nana particularly would have known. She knew that my father was mean and didn't feed us. Black nana went home back to the West Indies when I was about 5 or 6 and died there. And
Right.
she only fed Tracy because she loved my younger sister, and me and Kim didn't qualify for her love or attention.
God, you mentioned the shame that you felt about it at the time, which comes out in all sorts of different ways, and that shame also of not being properly attired, of not having
Yes.
clean school uniform or a school uniform that fits, or any of those things. And that's a lot of shame to carry with you as a child.
Yes.
At what point in your adult life did you become conscious of it? Or of either still having it or having carried it as a child?
I am, so I've got 2 children now. My daughter's 27 and she's a horsey girl, horsey. She's only interested in horses. I will go to town and I'll buy 3 carry bags of clothes for her. I'm clothing me, really.
Yeah.
And I'll say, oh, I bought you this jumper and I bought you this dress and I bought you this. She goes, okay. She's not interested. She's had no loss. She's had no deficit. And I wanted to try them on and look beautiful because I'm dressing me. I'm going back in time. When she was a little girl, she's adopted, so I didn't have any sort of network of moms like, antenatal classes or anything. So she goes to school at 4 or 5 and there's an Easter bonnet parade. I must have spent 60 quid on the Easter bonnet because she's going to have the best Easter bonnet.
Yeah.
She's going to have the best clothes. She's going to have outfits for every day of the week because I was trying to do it for me. Similarly with birthdays, similarly with Christmas, similarly with food. What do you want? Do you want that with that or that or that? Because the excess was ridiculous because I'm trying to fix something in me. And I think as I got older, I realised that is actually shit. Don't do that to your children. And I've stopped. But that fear I think there's still the fear there of being hungry and not managing and not having enough. But we all have it. Because there's 5 of us, we talk about it a lot. You're doing that because of that. And we go, okay, yeah. So you've got someone to call you to account, someone to help you through it. Because we all suffered greatly under this strange regime. But we all loved each other and got ourselves through it. And we laughed every day. Normally at my parents', it has to be said. But we did laugh every day. We found something joyous and silly or someone to mock. And so it sounds like it was tragic, and in many ways it was, but it was also beautiful and wondrous to have that childhood.
When did you decide that you were going to sit down and write a memoir about it? Because I remember talking to you in the past, and you were like, no chance. I'm not doing that. Not for me. Memoir's a mug's game. And then before I knew it, there's the book, and she's decided to do it. So what prompted it, and how did you feel about it, particularly those feelings of shame when you were revisiting it and making it real on the page?
Well, someone asked me to write it, so I hadn't thought of that before. But also, being cocky, I just thought, look, how hard's this going to be? Everybody has got 10 stories about their life that you've perfected over the years, and you've made them, you've tailored it, you know where the jokes are, you know how to tell it. So I just thought, knock them out, it'll be fine. I'll do it in about 6 months. No. Because actually, the anecdotes have become anecdotes, and they've had all the corners knocked off them. And
they're all polished.
And it's not actually the truth. And when you go back and you actually talk about the truth, what's it really like to be hungry? What's it really like to do this? Did that really happen? Did my mother make my brother wear lederhosen for a whole summer? Yes, she did. And you just think, it's mad. She bought this Davy Crockett hat one summer for no reason. She bought, without warning, she bought this hat, Davy Crockett hat, fur hat, and a mouth organ. And for the whole summer, she was not available to us. She was practicing the mouth organ wearing a Davy Crockett hat, sitting on the back step. That was just our life. And then I'm trying to think, where do I put the lederhosen? Where do I put the Davy Crockett hat? Because it's a mad world. So for me, it was making a narrative out of the mad childhood. There were so many weird things that happened. And I just thought, I'm just going to go that, and that. And in doing so, I found a lot of love for my parents. There are these 2 very damaged people who grew up in absolute poverty, even poorer than we were, who've got these 5 feisty, if anyone's black, they'll know what that means, cheeky children, much cleverer than they are, living in poverty, in a very racist society, trying their best to have their own paradise. And it was just a terrible time for them. And I found more respect for them, more love for them, more understanding for them. I still think they did a bad job, but that doesn't mean that I blame them, really. I just think, my God, you didn't leave. Neither of you left. I would have left. So, good for them that they stayed.
That is one of the really remarkable things about that story, actually, because I kept expecting one or the other of them just to not be there one morning when you got up.
Absolutely. And also, I had a really terrible time in my late teens, early 20s, really bad time, practically had a breakdown. And on the worst day, when I'm having this terrible breakdown, what do I want? I want my mom. And I go and find her, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and I find her working nights at Dudley Road Hospital. And, she takes care of me. She puts away all her madness and all her stuff and all her Jehovah's Witness stuff. And she loves me and looks after me, and she takes me home to my dad, who's super strict. And, well, you've been taking drugs, so what do you expect? He says nothing. He makes me a bowl of porridge, and they look after me. So for all their nonsense and neglect, that's who I want when I'm down. And I think that's a tribute to what I knew about them, that they loved me
Yeah.
They weren't doing a good job, but they loved me.
One of the things that's absent from the book that we often find in memoirs of writers is a love of reading.
Yeah.
Or a trip to the local library or a kindly English teacher. For you, it was the telly. I mean, and I spent as much time watching the telly as I did in the library, but you loved the telly, and the telly was a source of massive joy and escapism.
Yes.
And you didn't discover books until much later.
Yeah, I was, like I said, had a really bad time mentally, take way too many drugs, drunk too much, life of debauchery, which actually was great till it wasn't. And I'd stopped dead and I couldn't sleep. So I was working for the Crown Prosecution Service at the time, working for a senior solicitor, and I said to him, for God's sake, give me 10 books to read so that I can just get through the night without... One of the things that used to happen to me is my leg would not stop moving. I was so tense, and I just wanted to calm down enough to go to sleep. And he gave me these 10 books. What I didn't know is that he'd spent most of his life in the army. Oh. So he gave me military books. He gave me The Siege of Krishnapur, The Riddle of the Sands, Three Men in a Boat, War and Peace. And he just gave me these books. And of course, I knew nothing about books. So I just went, I bought the 10 books, I took them home, and I read them, and I was like, yes, I've arrived, I found a way, not to sleep, but a way to live through all of these fabulous stories. I was as addicted to books as anything I'd ever had.
As the addiction that you were kicking
As the
on.
addiction I was kicking, yeah.
The addiction that you were kicking, was that very consciously for you a reaction against the Jehovah's Witnesses? You were like, you've said I can't do this, I'm just going to take everything.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Jehovah's Witnesses believed that the end of the world was going to come in 1975. I would have been 15 in 1975. I knew that if God brought his righteous war against bad people, I was going to go. Believe me, I knew I would not meet the threshold.
Yeah.
So when the end didn't come in 1975, it was going to come in 1976.
So how did they explain at the time that it's leaves on the line, it's been delayed?
Leaves on the line, yeah, it's coming.
Right.
We've got it wrong, God hasn't.
Right, okay.
So any minute now. So right. I lived with that any minute now. And so didn't go to the Jehovah's Witness meeting. So at 16, you leave home. If you either go to the meeting or you leave home. So leave home at 16. And I'm like, right. It's 1976. The end is going to come. I'm going to die. Let me taste everything. What is forbidden? That I'm having it. That I'm having it. That I'm doing it. That I'm going to taste it. That I'm going to take. And so I did that for 5 years.
Wow.
And at the end of 5 years, I was fucked.
I bet you were.
I was just like, I can't keep doing this. I'm tired. The end hasn't come. It's probably not going to come. Is it going to come? I don't know. And also my head was gone from the drugs, from the lifestyle.
So you were 20 at that point?
I was 20, nearly 21, yeah. In fact, I had a 3-day 21st birthday party, because obviously I hadn't had birthdays. So at 21, I have this 3-day party, which I can't remember most of, because it was very heavily weed party. And I had some very bad times. You know, I'd had too much, and I thought, the end's not going to come, and my head's gone. And I think that was all part of my quasi-breakdown, that I just thought that it's not going to come, and I've spent these 5 years waiting for it and indulging to the max. I'm not going to do it half-heartedly, because I'm going to die.
Yeah.
It was get hung for a sheep as a lamb. Yeah. That was me. So then I thought, I can't do it anymore. And I stopped overnight. Overnight, I just thought, that's it, I've had enough. And it sounds like I was really strong. I was scared to death. Yeah. That's why I stopped. Not because I was brave or clever or anything. I thought I was losing my mind. I was losing my mind. And I just thought, no, that's it stops today.
My God. I was so scared for you at that point
yes.
in the book.
Yeah, me too.
It's like you were losing
I was losing myself completely. I didn't know what was real, what was not real. I didn't know how to look after myself. I could barely talk at some point. I couldn't be on my own. I couldn't be with people. I kept hearing a different voice in my head. And I was going, is that real or is that me? It was really scary. I was petrified. I was having panic attacks all the time.
Yep, and you just stopped. That was that.
Stopped
Yeah.
overnight. Literally just, that was it. I've never had anything, another drug since.
Segged
Ever.
from that to books, which it has to be
Drugs.
said you have approached in that way. I mean, I remember when I first encountered you, and you were like this, because you've obviously had a career before in the
Yes.
law, and I just thought that you were some kind of genius that had been tucked away, and I'd just not met yet, because you present as a sort of autodidact. It's like, I've devoured everything, I've read everything, I know it all, and it's true, and you do, and I think that's one of the reasons why you're such a good teacher as well, why you an inspirer of people in your writing group and stuff like that, because you're not pretentious about it. You talk about the merits of the book as a thing that you've experienced, and that's that.
I think the reason was, after the 10 books that the solicitor recommended me, I mean, they lasted barely 10 days, because I was...
War and Peace in less than 10 days.
Literally, I devoured it. I wasn't sleeping.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been an insomniac all my life, so I was getting through it. I was reading it the minute I got home, because I was living with my parents, which was another story. And I was just reading all night, getting up, reading all night, loved it. As soon as those 10 were over, another 10, another 10, another 10, until I had read hundreds of the classics, because all of these books that he recommended had a black spine. And so I just thought, I'll go for a black spine, until I got to, I sort of found Arnold Bennett, and then Arnold Bennett knew Gustave Flaubert, who knew Zola, and I was just reading and reading and reading and reading. I couldn't stop. One of the disadvantages of that, of course, is that I was reading men.
Yeah.
I was reading mostly men, because so many of the classics are written by men. And there's still a big gap in my reading where I haven't read enough contemporary women, but I was, devoured it. Still don't know what any of those literary terms like postmodernism means. Haven't got a clue. Never found out.
That's the whole point of postmodernism, is that you can argue about what postmodernism means. That's for another session. We'll do that session later. I'm going to take some questions from people online, and then we'll take some questions from you here in the room. I'm just going to refresh these, see if any of them have arrived yet. I wanted to ask you, just while I'm waiting for these to load, about the adaptation of My Name is Leon.
Yes.
How did you feel that went?
Great. It was so good. It was so good that they had managed, I mean, obviously it's painful when they lose characters, but I could see exactly what they were trying to do to make it, to take this thread and run with it. And I was on set for some of it. I've got a tiny, tiny, tiny 3-second part.
Have you?
I have. So I'll just tell you all about my big part. So they asked me to be in it, and at the time I had my hair sort of up. I said I can't be in it because they didn't have this hairstyle in 1981. So they took me to wardrobe, got me all 1980'd out, and then I'm sitting with a fake baby like this when Leon walks past. And I feel like I'm going, I feel so conspicuous, and no one else has seen me in it.
I didn't notice you. I must have.
I'm so glad.
I'll watch it back again, but you were really happy with the way it turned out.
Very, very happy. Yeah, loved it.
Lenny Henry's involvement.
Yes, he
Critical,
did
wasn't it?
really, really good.
Yep. This is a question from Paula K, who says, you say your words and language were policed by your parents and grandparents in your childhood. Do you think that influenced the need to write your own words to claim back autonomy? And are you going to write more memoir?
Definitely not going to write more memoir.
Are you really definitely not?
No, really, really not. Really, really not. I don't know that I did, that I wanted to reclaim my voice. I feel like I reclaimed it a long time ago amongst my brothers and sisters, where we would talk and dissect our childhood a lot, which I think is why we've worked it out. And I don't feel I had any axe to grind or scores to settle or anything that I'd lost. I think I only gained from having my childhood and to have so many other people that went through it with me.
I just want to go back to what you said just earlier about not writing another memoir.
Yeah.
Why not?
I've been married twice. I've been divorced twice. I've got 2 children. I wouldn't go to a place where I had to say bad things about people that are alive.
Okay.
And there are some people in the book that, like there's a couple of boyfriends in the book that are really shit. Now, they were shit at 19. Now they're happily married grandfathers.
Of course.
And I'm not going to name and shame what you like at 19. Are any of us great? I don't think so. So for me, I wouldn't want to go to a place where I had to say something damaging about someone. And there's material, but I wouldn't go there. I just don't think it's right.
Okay. This is from Anne. She says, I'm from a large Irish Catholic family with all that entails. There's a memoir. I'd love to know how on earth your mother got you to go to the meetings.
Emotional blackmail. My mother's she was a great crier. She could cry like that. And she'd go, oh, Jehovah. Oh my God, just get ready and go. It was not worth her grief and pain to say no. And when we did start saying no, around 15 and 16, she would wail. She would really cry and blackmail us and tell us we were going to die. And then she'd cry all the way to the meeting, and she'd turn up at the meeting with red eyes, and just not worth it.
How did it work out with your dad not going? How did he get off the hook?
He was overjoyed that we had no birthdays and Christmas because he didn't get to spend any money. So nothing. He just paid no heed to it, like it wasn't happening.
And she wasn't bothered that he was going to die in the impending apocalypse?
No. She
Quite
was
pleased
not.
about that, really, actually. Yes. She won't divorce him, but she will let him die in the fiery flames of
Absolutely.
hell. Yeah, fair enough. Okay. I'm not sure this is quite right. I won't ask that. Okay, questions in the room. Lots of hands up. Yes, there.
Kit, there were 3 Jehovah's Witnesses outside the Book Festival bookshop in Lauriston Place earlier, and I went up and said hello to them. What would you say to those people, well-dressed, middle-aged people today?
So I've had Jehovah's Witnesses knock my door, obviously, and I walked past a Jehovah's Witness the other day and they said hello to me. There's so much I would like to say to them, but actually the Jehovah's Witnesses, the flock, the congregation, they're lovely people. The higher up you go, the more like politics, the less, integrity, in my view, there is. It's a brainwashing cult. And so the people that, you see that knock your door, they're lovely people. They're just brainwashed. I mean, I nearly said to them, should we talk about 1975? But why? Why do that? What have I got to gain by that? And I don't think they're not going to have an honest conversation. I know as many scriptures as they do that I could take down and dissect and destroy and leave them with nothing. So if they knock my door, it's different. And I would definitely say, come on in. Let's have a look at the Bible together. But
what's been their reaction to the book as a community? Has there been a reaction?
I will get disfellowshipped. I'm not disfellowshipped. Disfellowshipped is
Can you
like
explain what that means?
Yeah, it's excommunication, where nobody speaks to you, where you're cast aside, you are, condemned. And I have never been disfellowshipped, but I will be disfellowshipped for this book. Probably.
You're sure about that? And,
Yes.
and can they disfellowship you in your absence? Like, you don't need to turn up and be like disfellowshipped.
Some people would turn up to be disfellowshipped, but I could easily be disfellowshipped in my absence, yes.
And what, they'll write to you and that's it?
No, I don't think they'll write to me. They'll just probably make an announcement. They might, it might just be in a local congregation, an announcement that I'm now disfellowshipped, so they can't talk to me.
And so that means that if they see you in public, they look away, they don't talk. It's like you don't, it's almost like a Russian short story, you just don't exist. They cut you out.
Cut you out, don't exist, wouldn't acknowledge you. And that would be the same as if that was your daughter. You would be cut out and not spoken to.
Yeah.
It just, 3 of my brothers and sisters are disfellowshipped already. I haven't been, my brother hasn't been, but that will happen, I think.
How will you feel about it?
Glorious. Yeah. Free
at last. Yes, there. Thank you.
I was interested last week listening to the Radio 4 adaptation, and they didn't say a great deal about when your father went back to St. Kitts and it wasn't as he had expected, and then came back was very quiet about it. Could you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, so he saved up a lot of money to go home to the West Indies and to build a little house out there so he could go back and show everyone what he'd done. And so when I was 14, he saved up the money to go home and bought all these beautiful suits and everything, and he bought a ticket that was a 6-month open ticket. So we were like, yes, Dad's gone. And he came back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, he was back home. And he said it was really hot. And we're like, really, Dad? The West Indies was really hot. He didn't like the food. He didn't like the heat. He was shocked that the island had moved on. It wasn't the island he left, obviously. He's been away 20 years.
Yeah.
He missed Morecambe and Wise.
Oh, God.
He missed the cricket, which wasn't on the telly over there. His friends were all here in the UK.
Yeah.
And so there was no one to go and play cards with. There was no one to go and have a drink of rum with. He was shocked. He had built his whole world around going home, and he could not believe that it wasn't the paradise that he thought. And I truly believe it broke him. I think he came home a different man than the one that left. He was disappointed, he was humiliated. We learnt this over many years. He didn't come home and say, I didn't like it, but dribs and jabs came out, and he never went back, and he never spoke about it. No. He just, it sort of destroyed his dream. He'd sacrificed a life with his children, a life with his wife, investing anything in the UK for this fantastic paradise, and it wasn't there. And when he came back and said it was too hot, we were like, Dad, it's the West Indies.
Newsflash.
Yeah.
There's a question here. Hiya. Microphone's coming.
Hiya. It sounds like you obviously had a very regimented childhood growing up. How did that shape you as a parent, knowing full well that what you wanted to pass on to your children and what not you wanted to pass on to your children?
Once again, super liberal. So I can remember my daughter, I think she was about 13 or 14, she had a friend called Sarah. And she loved Sarah. And I can remember saying to her, do you think Sarah might be your girlfriend? And she went, no, Mum, it's my friend. So, leave it a couple of months. I said, do you think Sarah might? She said, Mum, I'm not gay. Because to be gay was so bad as a Jehovah's Witness, it was so condemned. I wanted to give her the opportunity to be whoever, whatever, to have the most expansive ideas about life and the thought that she could be anything, she could be anyone, she could be this person today, that person tomorrow. Over the top I am about it. I'm definitely over the top about it. I bore them. And my children, they're both adopted. I make no secret about their adoptions. I'm probably a bit too much. That I give them so much freedom and affirmation about who they are, and I just bore them, basically. They know it. They know it. And I keep saying it to them, like, don't forget, you can be anything, you can be anyone, I will always love you, no matter what
I don't think children can ever hear that enough, can they?
No, I don't think so. Not for me, and I can't help it anyway, that's who I am. And again, I'm trying to put it right for me. Yeah. I know that, and I can't stop it, but I am trying to say, to me, at the same time, you can be anything. You're not going to die. You're not bad.
What did the children think of the book? Your children think of the book?
They haven't read it. They haven't read it.
You're far too liberal with them. You should lock them in a room until they've read your book, and they can come out and talk about it.
They're neither of them readers. I don't care. They've probably heard half of the stories anyway. They do, they're very, very proud of me, and I know it. And my son's got severe dyslexia. He listens to audiobooks, if he has to. And he'll go, it's really good. They watched Leon on the telly, obviously, because it's telly, and they loved it.
Yeah.
And also, I gave them some money each, so they love that.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Was there another hand up here? Yes, hello. The microphone will appear with you in a second. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I heard you speak about your father sacrificing, you said sacrifice so much for a paradise far away, and your mother, for her paradise was far away in time in a way. I'd be interested to hear what you think or feel about paradise.
Yeah. Paradise is here and now completely. I don't believe in an afterlife. I don't believe in God. I do believe that we can, paradise is amongst people, the relationships we have with people, and how much we try and make life good for other people. I don't believe in paradise being over there or then or to come. And I think that's, for me, lazy and dangerous thinking, that there's going to be some big thing, big answer that's going to come. I think change and paradise will come incrementally through our dedication to making a fairer society for other people. And I really don't ever want to put off doing something for another day. So I think paradise is this moment here with everybody and everyone that's bothered to come out, and is to be enjoyed.
It's like a gorgeous answer to that question. Yes, a microphone's going to come over to you. There you go. It's behind you. It's on the way. There you are. Person there in purple, I think. I'm colourblind. You could be wearing green.
I wanted to ask Kit, did anyone at your school, teachers, inspire you with literature or English?
No. No, really not. I had quite a difficult time in junior school. We lived in a very, very white area, and teachers, at least two of the teachers that taught, it's very different in those days because you just had one teacher. I don't know if it's still, you had one teacher for the whole day, every day, and that the teachers we had were not kind at all. And like I say, I was hungry. And in secondary school, no, there wasn't any teachers that really gave me a love of literature. I found reading painful and boring, and I was very turned off. School, teachers, maths in particular, but also English, yeah.
That's such an unusual way to end up as a writer. Like, there are very few writers I know that say that. I hold my English teacher as like goddess.
Yeah, no.
She was just so kind to me and gave me the books I needed. But yeah, you didn't have that.
No, not one.
But you got there. You found the solicitor with the very militaristic,
Absolutely.
slightly dry taste in books, but
Slightly
and
dry,
you fought your way through that.
and they
to
were
get to
great.
your-
Those books, because I had no expectations
Yeah.
of them, I loved them. I loved Three Men in a Boat. I loved The Riddle of the Sands and The Siege of Krishnapur and The Red Badge of Courage. I loved them because I just drank them in, and they were fabulous.
Yeah.
So to me, it was just like reading anything else. It was great.
Yeah, it was an oasis in the desert,
Yes.
right? That's exactly what it was. A kind of paradise. The
Yes,
beginning
a kind of paradise. Good
What
title.
are you writing at the minute?
I'm writing another novel that I'm in love with. I can't wait to write it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Oh, that's such a nice bit of the process.
Yes.
Of course,
great.
you'll hate it
Yes.
in a while, but right now you love
I
it, love it.
Yes.
Okay, and is it very early stages?
About 60,000 words.
Oh no, you're quite far
Yeah.
on then.
Yeah.
Here was me this
Great.
morning talking to you about my being thrilled with my 15,000 words, and you're like, oh, I've got 60. Oh. Get you. All right, well, we'll see you back here for the next book in a
Indeed.
couple of years. Please join me in thanking Kit de Waal.
Thank you.